All right, so today we got a very special guest on the podcast. We have one of the #1 solar lead generation specialists in the entire country. I personally, I was around. We happen to have apartments right across the hall when he ramped up a campaign from $0 to $100,000 in just a month, made an incredible amount of money. It really definitely caught my attention into what's going on with the solar industry. If you don't know anything about solar, this podcast is going to have an incredible amount of value. It's one of the few kind of easier ways to make money that's out there. And it's something that is not nearly as crowded as some of the other kind of more popular things that don't require a ton of money to get started. There definitely is some investment in the beginning, but if you follow what Joe does, you can really make a lot of money extremely quickly. So let's check him out. Here's Joe Kenney. All right, so Joe, you're known as one of the #1 solar lead generation guys that's out there. I saw you just destroy a competition of lead generation for solar companies that was put on by Tyler. You're like, there was everyone else, and then you were way up here. So it seems like you really know what's going on in the solar lead industry, and I'm really happy to have you on the podcast today. Basically, we want to help people enhance their productivity and have more happiness in their life. And using specialists like you instead of having to reinvent the wheel, I think is a great option for people to have. And tell me a little bit about the. Let's start with let's start with a little bit of background before you did the competition with Tyler and destroyed everyone on that. What led up to that? How long have you been in the solar industry for?
I've been generating solar leads probably for 2 or 3 years now. It'll be 3 years coming up here in July, and that's online. I did solar probably back in 2014 for a bit. We had different ways of generating leads, and now that Facebook's out there, it's just 100 times easier than knocking doors or making phone calls.
Okay, so in the beginning, you were starting out with you were doing the grunt labor. You were out there knocking on doors, doing phone calls, doing things the hard way, and then now pretty much Facebook has been the majority of what's going on in terms of the solar lead gen.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook's pretty much taken over the market when it comes to, not only solar lead gen, but pretty much any lead gen, based on the targeting and the audience that you can choose from, the areas. It just makes it so much easier. Now, the cost has gone up drastically. We're not getting the $4 leads, $2 leads in solar that we used to get 2 years ago. But it still definitely makes sense. Lead to appointment. It's super easy. As long as you have that process in place.
Okay. So if there's a solar company that's having problems getting business for you, you can pretty much help them out in most areas. Or are there specific areas that that you work with over others? Who can you help?
Well, I mean, see, I work in solar. We actually have a solar company that we do install. We do everything from start to finish. And then our other side is the Powersol marketing, which we do marketing, appointment setting for solar companies throughout the United States. We're also coming out with a course on how to generate solar leads. So pretty much in the solar niche, we can help people from start to finish.
Wow. So it can really turn on pretty fast. I remember when I first really met you, it was kind of right in the beginning of the the month where you went from basically 0 up to 100K in 1 month. And I saw firsthand how fast it can go. You want to walk us through that process a little bit, because it's something that I think there's lots of people out there that are either basically at 0 or completely at 0 and just getting into the game. And there's kind of a preconceived notion, I think, that it can really take a while to be able to ramp things up. But I think you've proven that you have the magic formula to be able to flip the switch and really get a lot of business coming in quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the biggest mistake that people make in lead gen is the way the Facebook algorithm. Well, actually, nobody knows the way the Facebook algorithm works, but based on my experience and what's happened to me, is in the beginning, if you have, the most important thing is to have an offer right. Once you get the offer right, where people are actually opting in, you've got half the battle won right there. Knowing what angles, what emotions people, what emotions that people buy from, and how, each person opts in differently. So you run different ads, different areas. You got to test a bunch of things. But one of the things that really helped us is that most people that run leads, they'll either get a bunch of leads for cheap, and then they ramp it up, and then it's not cost effective because they didn't do it right. And in the beginning, the way Facebook, again, my experience is that you get a bunch of cheap leads, but they're a bunch of people that are they opt into everything. So Facebook initially shows it to people that are very frequently opt into things. So, usually you're going to get a bunch of cheap leads in the beginning, and then you're going to ramp it up super high, and then it's going to go from $6 to $120, and you're trying to figure out what happened, what's going on. It's getting over that step is what helped us. So we started out, I think we were spending, we start out usually $400 or $500 a day, two to 500 a day per ad set, and then find the winners and start ramping it up from there. I think in that month, I think we started it out around 500 to a couple thousand a week, and ramped it up to 35,000 per week in less than 30 days.
So in order to do that, did you see things kind of go up and down and then back up again in terms of the amount of leads and the cost of leads and the effectiveness of the campaigns? Or when you say kind of push it over the hill, what are you talking about?
Well, because Facebook has what's called the initial learning phase. And once you get that 50 to 100 leads, it starts to optimize, it starts to know what you're looking for and what's working for you. So once you start to get over that, 4,000 or 5,000 that you spent, now the lead price starts to come down. So it goes up and then it comes back down, but most people quit when it starts going up. We threw more money at it. We did kind of the shotgun approach, just throw a ton of money at it. And we know we're going to lose on some. We know we're going to win on some. The ones that we're winning on, we do more of them. You got to pay to play.
Okay. So the leads that you generate, I mean, it's obviously taken lots and lots of money for you to be able to hone things into the point that you have, versus trying to do stuff in kind of a do-it-yourself sort of thing. There's definitely some pretty big advantages to working with somebody like you that already has things figured out. Since you are kind of in a unique position where you have a solar company that's in Florida, right? Is the only area that you're serving for that?
Yeah, that's the only place I have sales guys.
Okay.
We do have contracts throughout the U.S., but our main focus is lead generation. Um, you know, Arizona, Nevada, Illinois, um, Colorado, most of the West. We've done a lot of leads on the East Coast. That's kind of like we're looking for, is to kind of move into that area.
Okay. So because you kind of have the unique thing of having a regional company and then also doing the leads, you have a good perspective of what it's like, what the numbers are like for being on the install side, which is where a lot of the people, that's where everyone that's purchasing the leads, that they all have an install company, right? Or are there people
Yeah,
that are middlemaning it? What kind of opportunities are there to make money, and how much money can you make by generating solar leads and by actually following through on them? How much is there typically on the back end? Like what are some of the companies able to pull in to warrant spending $35,000 a week on leads?
yeah. I mean, the installs, is huge profit margins on them, especially if you get them right. There's just, we kind of reverse engineered the whole solar process, where we were a marketing company first, and then we started getting into the sales side, the install side, the finance engineering, and so we kind of went backwards, but it really helped us out because in the beginning we had too many appointments, and our closers kind of sucked at the time. Um, so our biggest challenge, in the beginning for us, was closing deals, where most companies, their biggest challenge is finding people willing to listen. Um, and we took it a bit further than just the lead process. Yeah, you can generate the leads, but more importantly, it's, lead to appointment. How many of these leads are qualified? How many of these leads are setting appointments? How many are closing? Um, so there's a lot more to it than just generating the lead. Uh, Obviously you want to find companies that are able to just take the leads, as many as you can send them. They got their own call center, they set them, and you're just sending them a ton of volume that converts. We've got a couple different models that we use, as far as, we can generate the lead and set the appointment for you, or we can just send you the lead. Um, it's there's a lot more to curating the lead and setting the appointment, than just calling leads. Leads dry up super, super fast, and that's what people don't understand, is that you got to hit people while they're excited about the offer. So I mean, you got to hit them within 5 minutes. So as soon as that lead comes in, they need to be contacted, as soon as possible. We like to put a webhook into the lead and send it directly to a dialer, where somebody's sitting there ready to set that appointment.
Okay. So in terms of just the potential profits that people can have, if how much is typically made, and for other people that are listening that aren't in the solar industry yet, I'm sure a lot of the installers that would be purchasing leads have a pretty good idea of where they're at, but what kind of profits happen here with, you have a lead coming in that you said earlier, between $3 and $100, and then some of those are going to fall off, and you're not going to be able to set an appointment with it. When you set an appointment, and you're able to close a sale, what kind of numbers does that generate on the back end for the installers? What kind of profit margins are we looking at here?
I mean, it depends on what kind of red line that solar company is working with, but I would say the typical solar install is going to have about $8,000 worth of profit in it.
Okay.
Probably more but there's usually a bunch of different hands in the in the pot. One of them is obviously the financing. They take a huge chunk out of that. But typically, after your cost per install, which would be the cost per, acquisition, um, paying the sales guy to go out there and close the deal. Usually there's, anywhere to $4,000 to $5,000 left over in the deal.
Okay.
So these companies that are doing 200-300 installs a month are definitely making some cheddar.
Yeah, sounds like it. So there's the initial money on the install, and then is there any residuals that come through as a result of the power that's generated on these things? Is there anything that happens on that end too, or is it all mostly upfront?
As far as for the customer, or for for marketing, on the marketing side, on the sales side, as far as residuals.
Yeah, is there anything that comes through with that, or does most of that go to the customer in forms of savings on their power bill, or how does all that work?
Okay, so there's so many incentives out there for customers right now, and that's why it's super easy to, I wouldn't say it's easy to generate leads, but if you get the right ad out there, you can get people to opt in, and having somebody good on the phone convincing them to set an appointment, someone going out there to close it. Now, like there's depending on the state, there's different, tax incentives. Across the board, there's a 30% dollar for dollar tax incentive for people to purchase solar. And it's supposedly going away at the end of the year. So that's one of those urgency things you can create. However, there's other states that have, net metering where it's dollar for dollar, or you get paid per, per hour, per kilowatt hour. There's just so many different rebates out there depending on the state. Like VRBO and Airbnb rentals actually can get the macro, so they're eligible for up to a 55% tax credit. So,
Wow.
Once the system's, it's all zero down. For the most part, it doesn't cost the customer anything. They're basically swapping apples for apples. A clean energy for their traditional power bill. So they're going to have a solar payment. It's usually lower than what their typical utility bill is. The huge savings on solar comes on the, not necessarily the first year. The first year they might save, $20, $30 a month. But utility companies have what's called an escalator. So it goes up, your utility bill goes up about, here in Florida, about 4.2% per year. And it continues to rise with inflation, fees, just things they add in there. So, kind of the way we like to explain it is if I were to tell you that you could lock in the price of gas at 99 cents in 1990, you'd say that's a good deal, right?
Definitely.
It's kind of the same thing here, where you're locking in the price of energy at a lower rate than what you're currently paying, and that price is going to stay the same. Once the system's paid off, then you're not going to have any type of utility bill. You might have a connection fee, or usually we try to put the offset above whatever their $5 connection fee is, so they're overproducing to pay for that. There's just so many benefits to going solar, and in the next 5 years, it's just going to get hotter and hotter. I mean, obviously there's more competition out there, but competition drives awareness. Makes the industry healthier.
Yeah.
There's just so much money. If anybody's thinking about getting into marketing, or they're already into marketing, and they're, I'm not into the big niche hopping thing, because the grass is never greener on the other side. However, if you're thinking about getting into solar and it's something you want to stick with, you can make tons and tons of money. And there's lots of solar companies willing to throw tons of money at you. to generate them leads.
What's kind of the standards that people are willing to pay for leads and for appointments? Is it something that's common to sell the appointments by themselves, or sell the leads by themselves, and then some of those are going to transfer into appointments, some are not? What kind of costs are people looking at in order to be able to get going?
As far as like for a marketing standpoint, or for a solar company looking to buy leads?
For a solar company looking to buy leads, if there's an installer out there that, you know, has a small company, they're looking to ramp up, they don't really know how to do the marketing side of it, they want to get some more business, how much money are they going to need to be able to get into the game?
Yeah, I mean, usually, you know, if they're trying to buy leads, there's companies out there that are selling them for $50, and those leads have been sold, you know, to 25 different companies, and then they just typically, you're in a bidding war and they don't work. You know, you have companies out there that are selling them for appointments for 150, 200, you know, probably not the best closing ratios. What I like to do, and what we one of the offers that we're working on, we've already beta tested, is a front end back end payment. So we pay, you know, we would charge per sit, depending on the state, and then we'd get money on the back end that you can just build into the system. You know, so it'd be, depending on the state, you know, 75 to 100, 150 per sit, you know, qualified sit, and then 10 to 15 cents on the back end. And again, that depends on what state you're in. Obviously, in California, lead cost and appointment cost is going to be a lot higher than if you're in, say, Nevada or Arizona or Illinois. So there's a bunch of different models that companies go after, or, you know, look into. I will say there's no one really doing it how we're doing it. And the appointment to close ratio is, you know, you want to keep that cost per install under, you know, $800 to $1,000. That's where you're really maximizing your cost.
Okay, so you're able to get a sale for $800 to $1,000, and then you're making up to $8,000 on it, 5,000 on the low end. That's a pretty big markup. I can definitely see where things can ramp up pretty quickly with that kind of returns. You can start people pretty small, and they can quickly work their way up the ladder to where they're really raking in some cash.
Yeah, and the front end back end payment makes it, you know, makes it the buy in cheaper, and then it also, you know, you can build that cost into the back end of the system. You know, it doesn't change the customer's price. If you got to raise it 10 cents or 15 cents, it doesn't change the customer's monthly bill enough that it's really going to affect, you know, the sale. And, you know, most solar companies we work with, the smart ones, already have some kind of type of marketing already built into or allocated to their, you know, cost per watt.
Wow. So, I mean, basically, it seems like a really, really good opportunity. If you're able to get the leads at that price, and you're able to get the margins are how they are, and then the sale is basically a no-brainer, because what you're saying is that basically people have their conventional utility that they're paying for out of pocket currently, which may be upwards of $200 a month. Instead of having to pay that, they're going to make a payment on the hardware that they're putting on their roof that's going to be able to produce the same amount of power for them, and they're not going to have to put any money down. So they're basically given the option to be able to have clean energy and be able to be running under their own power versus having to pay for it. So it's basically like having your own power plant instead of having to rent to rent it, right? So the sale makes a lot of sense. It seems like it really is a no-brainer for people to be able to say yes to that. So the closing rates are pretty high.
Oh yeah. The closing rates are very high. It's right now it's pretty much a no-brainer if they qualify. If they got taxable income, they have a good roof that we can put solar on. Um, you know, it's the long-term savings that really sells them. I would say the biggest objection that people run into is the preconceived notions that people have about solar, and uh, um, you know you have all these like political campaigns that run anti-solar campaigns, but um, so it's confirming what they've already heard and then overcoming those objections. And part of that is done in the marketing side, um, where people can actually do their research and see that, uh, what solar is all about. You can actually look up your bill and see 4 years ago, you were probably paying 20% less than what you're paying today. Um, one of the things is people say, oh, it's, most of the finance companies we use charge 3.99%. However, you're paying 100% interest to the utility company right now. So it's just one of those sales, and there's not too many things you're going to sell where you can't get I can't afford it. Now they may not qualify as far as, sometimes it doesn't pencil out if they have a low electric bill and no taxable income. But if they can afford it, actually, if they qualify, they can afford it, because, you have two options. You can either use electricity, or you could use a candle to light your home. I guess, they have batteries and generators, but the technology is just not there yet. Solar is the future. That's why the big companies like Apple, Amazon, um, you know, Tesla, all these companies are getting into the solar industry. Facebook, they all went, completely solar, even for their own buildings. There's a reason why that smart money went there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So obviously, I mean, it sounds like it's a very, very lucrative industry. You're able to make things very, very easy for people, where basically they can have essentially a done for you marketing solution where all they really have to do is close and install, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically it's, well, solar is a major project installing, but your install team should be aware of that. You should have a process in place to be able to pull permits, get the NOC, do the engineering. But most solar companies already have that. What they're missing is the marketing side. A lot of them try to do the in-house marketing, and then it costs them too much money. They hire the wrong person. I've heard the story, 2-3 dozen times, and then they start doing it themselves. Um, I'm not saying you can't still make money knocking doors. You can. It sucks, and there's too many things working against you now, knocking doors. Like, I know with my house, just in the neighborhood, the first time someone knocks on a door with someone with a Ring doorbell, now they're posting it all over social media. Who's this guy? What's he selling? Call the cops. It's with lead gen, going to an appointment, so much easier to have sales guys just go straight to an appointment. And, it's easier to keep people long-term. It's easier to get better sales guys. And, that's why you see the big companies like, Freedom Forever or Power Home, they're taking over the solar industry, and based on, just appointments.
Wow. So being that you work with so many different companies that are out there, you have a pretty unique insight in terms of what works and what doesn't. Aside from trying to do the in-house marketing, where obviously there's a lot of money that can be lost by doing that incorrectly, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see with different companies that make it so that they can screw this opportunity up? What are some of the things that roadblocks that people hit that either keep them from being able to stay in business or keep them from really being able to take their revenues to the next level?
A lot of them is with the solar company. It's the smaller solar companies that don't have the finance, the finance companies that the bigger ones have. So sometimes their offer is not as good. It's their lead. People genuinely think they can throw, $200 a week at ads and think it's going to 20 minutes. And that just, it doesn't make sense. But people actually do that. So it's, you got to be, it's one of those, again, you got to pay to play. So they got to be willing to spend 4,000 or 5,000 at a minimum. I would say 6,000 a minimum monthly. If you really wanted to start generating appointments, because it's that volume that, Facebook is correcting itself with cost. However, that volume catches up. So you want that lead to appointment ratio to be, 20%, 25%. So you're spending, say $10,000. You should be generating, I'm not a real good math guy, but you should get, 100 appointments out of that, or 80 appointments, whatever it is. But it should be enough appointments where you're to close some deals, cover the cost and make a ton of money.
What kind of closing ratio would you say is common? Obviously, it's different all across the board, but if you were to make a generalization, you think it's like 1 out of 4 appointments, 1 out of 10 appointments? How many people? It seems like a fairly easy sale, so it seems like that ratio is probably pretty high compared to other industries.
Yeah, I mean, the closing ratio is high depending on the area. Again, it depends on the electric company, but I would say, and it's hard to generalize and say everywhere. Like if you look at Illinois, you're going to get if you're not closing over 50%, and there's a problem. Florida is a little bit higher or a little bit lower as far as closing. You're probably going to be in the, depending how vetted the lead is, you should probably be 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Again, some companies go out there with the two, they go out there to get the electric bill, and then they don't set an appointment to get the proposal out to the people. So it comes down to process. But I would say, lead to sale, lead appointment to sale. You should definitely be, 1 in 5 leads that you generate should set an appointment. And then, 1 out of 4 or 5 of those leads should sell.
Okay, so yeah, that's definitely pretty high. Is there any places geographically where solar doesn't make sense? I mean, obviously, a place like Florida is going to have much more sun than in Illinois. How's the technology work with places that have a little bit more of the 4 seasons kind of climate versus places that are typically sunny year round like Florida? Do the solar panels work in the winter?
Yeah. You use less power in the winter than you do in the summer. I mean, it's what's called net metering. So you're actually hooked up to the grid. So the grid would be your so-called battery. So it's like debits and credits. You're selling, you know, the solar you produce back to the solar company, and then you're you know, getting credits for energy that you use. You know, there's just different states have different rates. So some, you know, some areas don't make sense as far as you know, the rates are just so low. However, you know, there's, as far as, you know, the sun being out, you know, all the states we're in, there's really no issues. Again, there's just, it comes down to awareness. Like California is so far ahead in the solar game, you know, where the customers are already pretty much educated on it. So even though the leads are more expensive, it's still an easier sale. Where Florida, we're not so educated on solar here. People are really unfamiliar with it. So, you know, it's a lot more of an education-based sale when you're going out there.
Wow. Well, I know that you're a busy guy and you got a lot of stuff that you got to get to. So I don't want to take too much of your time away from your workday today. But before we wrap things up, can you please let everybody know the best way to get in touch with you, so that if they're looking for solar leads, if they have a solar company that needs more help setting appointments, getting more leads coming in off Facebook, how can they get in touch with you, Joe?
I would say the best way to get in touch with me would probably be either email or through Facebook.
Okay.
Now, you can email me at joseph@powersoulusa.com. That's POWERSOL USA.com.
Okay.
Or you know, my Facebook. So I know a lot of people that probably see this are either friends with me or have mutual friends. So just Joseph Kenney.
Okay.
Although that's probably the best way.
Okay. And we'll put a contact form under this, or a link to a contact form if you're watching this on YouTube or on our website, wherever you see it. And if you're listening to the audio online, then Joe at Powersol, one more time.
Joseph, JOSEPH at PowerSolUSA.com. Perfect.
So aside from the one last question before we wrap it up, Joe, I know that you're busy. You mentioned that you're also putting a course together to help other people that are aspiring marketers be able to do what you do.
Yeah, we're working on putting together a course for solar lead generation. You know, we just want to do it real time and not, you know, most of the courses you see out there were what worked 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. You know, that's one of the hesitations that I've had with it is, if we put out a course, we want to have what's working today, what's working in the solar industry right now to generate leads, and not what worked 6 months ago or a year ago, or, you know, what's going to get you kicked off of Facebook and things like that. So that's something we have in the works. It's probably going to be, I would say, in the end of March. You know, it'll just be open probably for maybe 2 to 3 months, and then we'll close it and open a new one. One of the cool things is that if you do get the course, we have someone that's willing to buy all the leads that you generate. So there's a good opportunity there.
Pretty much
you don't even have to,
a done for you kind of solution. They just got to insert their own marketing dollars and use the formula that you provide them, and pretty much they can use that to turn it into a cash machine. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much you don't even have to go find a client. we'll buy all your leads.
Wow. Wow. Well, definitely if you want to get on the wait list for that course, contact Joe about that on the contact form or by sending him an email. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and explain the kind of ins and outs of the solar industry. You provided an incredible amount of value, and really, really happy to have you here on the podcast. It's a really lucrative industry, and I don't think many people really understand the ins and outs of it. And once it's explained, you know, in the way that you explained it, it's a very, very good opportunity to get into. So thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
All right.
All right. You guys have a good one.